The woman at the check-in table smiled at me the way people do when they have bad news they do not want to own. Then she handed me a gray badge. Not ivory like the other guests. Not gold like the women drifting past me in silk dresses with champagne already in hand. Gray. I looked down and read the words once, then again. Limited access guest. For a second I honestly thought it had to be a mistake. Behind me, cars rolled up the long gravel drive of the Whitmore estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, one after another, glossy and quiet, like they belonged there. In front of me the mansion rose white and enormous against the June sky, all columns and trimmed hedges and old money confidence. My sister Miranda's wedding looked exactly like the kind of day my mother had spent her whole life dreaming of. Then my mother appeared at my elbow in a pale blush gown, and diamonds I knew she did not own. She leaned close enough for me to smell her perfume and whispered, almost pleasantly, "That means no plate for you, Waverly." No plate. Not we had to adjust the seating. Not there was confusion with the planner. Just that. A fact, a decision, a place assigned to me with all the warmth of a parking permit. I stood there holding the badge between two fingers, while guests brushed past us toward the garden ceremony. Somewhere off to the right, a string quartet was playing something light and expensive. My mother kept smiling, because from a distance this probably looked like a tender private moment between mother and daughter. But all I could hear was the number in my head. $10,000. 3 years of skipped vacations, 3 years of bringing pasta from home in plastic containers, 3 winters in the same black coat, stitching the lining back when it tore, 3 years of trying to give my sister a wedding gift generous enough to say what nobody in my family had ever let me say out loud. I belong here too. And now I was being told I could watch the ceremony, hand over the envelope, and disappear before dinner. I should tell you something before I go any further. People love to think moments like this come out of nowhere, like a family breaks in a single afternoon, like humiliation begins with the badge. It doesn't. By the time my mother whispered those 6 words, this had already been happening to me for most of my life. And if you know what it feels like to be invited just close enough to witness love, but never close enough to receive it, stay with me. Because what happened next did not begin at that check-in table. It began 6 months earlier, with a text from Miranda and a photo of a diamond ring. 6 months before the wedding, my phone lit up with a message from our family group chat. A group chat I had been part of for years but never quite inside of. Miranda had sent a photo of her left hand resting against a glass table, sunlight catching the edges of a diamond so large it didn't look real. The caption was simple. He proposed. No build-up, no context, just that. A few seconds later, my mother responded. My baby. This is the happiest day of my life. Not Miranda's life. Hers. My father followed with a thumbs-up emoji, which somehow felt exactly like him. Present, technically. Absent, emotionally. I stared at the photo longer than I meant to. Jonathan Whitmore III. I had met him twice. The first time, he spoke for 40 minutes about golf. The second time, he didn't speak to me at all. His family lived in Greenwich, the kind of family that had estates instead of houses, that used words like summering without irony. His mother sat on boards. His father had retired early from something involving hedge funds and numbers too large to feel real. Miranda fit into that world like she had been designed for it. Harvard MBA, investment banking, tailored dresses and effortless confidence. I typed 3 different responses before settling on something safe. Congratulations, Miranda. I'm happy for you. The message sat there. No reply, no acknowledgement, just another line in a conversation that kept moving without me. 2 weeks later, the invitation arrived. It wasn't mailed. It was delivered. Thick cotton paper heavy in my hands, gold-embossed lettering. A monogram that looked like it had been designed by someone who charged by the hour. There was an insert about accommodations at a nearby hotel, $450 a night, discounted. I stood in my tiny kitchen, the radiator hissing behind me, and read every word twice. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I decided to try again. Not halfway, not quietly, not in the background. This time, I would show up in a way they couldn't ignore. The next morning, I opened a separate savings account. I named it Wedding. At first, the number grew slowly. $50 here, $100 there. Small transfers that meant skipping takeout, skipping drinks after work, skipping anything that wasn't necessary. Then it became a pattern. I started bringing lunch every day, coffee at home. I said no to weekend trips. I stopped replacing things that broke unless I absolutely had to. When my coat tore at the seam that winter, I sat on my bed with a needle and thread and fixed it myself. Every dollar I saved, I told myself the same thing. This is going to matter. Not because Miranda needed the money, but because maybe finally this would be the thing that made my parents look at me differently. Not as the quieter daughter, not as the practical one, not as the one who did fine, but as someone worth seeing. By the time spring came, the account had reached $10,000. I remember staring at that number on my banking app, my chest tight with something that felt almost like hope. I didn't know yet that my mother already had plans for that money. Plans that did not include me sitting at the table. 3 weeks before the wedding, I went to my bank on a Tuesday afternoon during my lunch break. It was the same branch I'd been using for years. Same quiet line, same neutral carpet. The kind of place where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. I walked up to the counter and told the teller I needed a cashier's check. "For how much?" she asked. "10,000, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Her eyebrows lifted just slightly, but enough for me to notice. "That's a beautiful gift," she said as she processed the request. I gave a small smile. "I hope so." She printed the check, slid it across the counter, and asked if I wanted an envelope. "Yes," I said immediately. Something about that mattered to me more than it should have. The presentation, the formality, the idea that it would look like something significant when Miranda opened it. Like I was. That night I sat at my kitchen table, the same small table where I ate most of my meals alone, and wrote her a letter. I kept it simple. "Dear Miranda, congratulations on your wedding. I know we haven't always been close, but I hope this gift helps you and Jonathan build a beautiful life together. Wishing you happiness. Love, Waverly." I stared at the word love for a long time before I folded the paper. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I wasn't sure it had ever been returned. I placed the letter and the check into the envelope, sealed it carefully, and wrote both our names on the front. Then, without fully knowing why, I took a photo. The envelope, the check, the letter. I saved it in a folder on my phone. Something in me, quiet, almost instinctive, wanted proof that this had been real, that I had tried. Later that night, my phone rang. "Mom." I almost didn't answer. But I did. Her voice came through bright and controlled, the way it always sounded when she had already decided how a conversation should go. "Waverly, have you bought your gift yet?" "I have," I said. A brief pause. "Well, I was thinking it might be easier if you just sent the money to me now. Your father and I are putting together something substantial, and we could include your portion. It would look more cohesive on the card." Cohesive. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the envelope on the table. "I'd rather give it myself," I said. Another pause. Longer this time. "I just think," she continued, her tone tightening slightly, "that it would be more appropriate coming from the family as a whole. These things matter, Waverly." I knew what she meant. Not generosity. Appearance. Credit. "I understand," I said carefully, "but I'd still like to give it directly." Silence settled between us. Then she exhaled, sharp and disappointed. "Fine. Do whatever you want." The line went dead. No goodbye. I sat there for a while after that, the quiet of my apartment pressing in around me. The envelope didn't look different. Nothing had changed. And yet something had shifted. It was small, easy to ignore, but it was there. For the first time, I wondered, not clearly, not fully, but enough to feel it, whether this gift was ever meant to include me at all. 2 months before the wedding, Miranda's bridal shower was held at the plaza. Of course it was. Everything about it felt like a preview of the life she was stepping into: high ceilings, polished marble, waiters who moved like they had been trained not to exist unless needed. The kind of place where even silence felt expensive. I wasn't involved in planning it. That role went to Miranda's closest friends from business school, and a few relatives on my mother's side, the kind who always seemed to appear when there was something elegant to attend. Women who wore dresses that didn't wrinkle and spoke in soft, confident tones about travel, investments, and people I had never heard of. I arrived on time. No one was waiting for me. A hostess checked my name, smiled politely, and guided me to a table near the back of the room. Not the back, but far enough that I could see everything without being part of anything. I sat down across from two women I didn't know. They were kind enough. We exchanged names, made small talk about work, the weather, how beautiful everything looked. But there was a distance to it. The kind that says, "You're here, but you're not one of us." I was used to that feeling. What I wasn't used to was how sharp it felt that day. Miranda moved through the room like she belonged to it, laughing, hugging guests, glowing in a way that made people lean toward her without realizing it. My mother stayed close by her side, introducing her to people as if she were unveiling something she had carefully curated. Harvard, I heard her say more than once. Investment banking. Jonathan's family is just wonderful. Every introduction polished Miranda a little brighter. I noticed something else too. No one introduced me. At some point, my mother stood to give a toast. The room quieted immediately. She spoke about Miranda's achievements, her intelligence, her grace, about how proud she was, about how this marriage was the beginning of something extraordinary. 7 minutes. I counted without meaning to. She didn't say my name once. Not as a sister, not as family, not even as someone present in the room. I smiled when everyone else did. I clapped at the right moments. From the outside, I looked perfectly fine. But something inside me had gone very still. I excused myself after the toast and walked to the restroom. The lighting was softer there, warmer. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my mascara even though it didn't need fixing. I just needed a reason to stand still. That's when I heard voices from one of the stalls. My mother. And Aunt Harriet. "I'm so glad you didn't make her a bridesmaid," Harriet said in a hushed voice. A soft laugh followed. "I know," my mother replied. "Can you imagine the questions? What does she do? Where does she live?" Another laugh, lighter this time. Miranda understood immediately. "Jonathan's mother is very particular about appearances. We can't have anything distracting." Distracting. The word landed harder than it should have. I stared at my reflection. At the careful makeup. The simple dress. The effort I had put into looking like I belonged in that room. Distracting. Not daughter. Not sister. Just something that didn't fit the picture they were trying to present. I didn't move until I heard them leave. Then I washed my hands slowly, dried them, and looked at myself one more time. For a moment I considered walking out. Just leaving. But I didn't. Because some part of me still believed the wedding day would be different. That when it mattered most, they would remember who I was. I should have known better. 1 week before the wedding, an email came through from the wedding planner. Subject line: Final rehearsal dinner list. I almost didn't open it. I wasn't part of the planning. No one had asked for my input. But something about seeing my family's name attached to something so formal made me curious. So I clicked. The list was clean, organized, alphabetical. 40 names. Miranda's bridesmaids, Jonathan's groomsmen, both sets of parents, extended relatives from his side, a few of Miranda's closest friends who had flown in early. I scanned it once, then again, then slower. My name wasn't there. At first I thought I'd missed it. I checked the spelling, looked for initials, even scanned for just Waverly in case they'd left off the last name. Nothing. I sat back in my chair, the glow of my laptop screen reflecting faintly against the wall of my apartment. Then I picked up my phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart." Her tone was light, casual, like nothing in the world was out of place. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I just saw the rehearsal dinner list. I don't think I'm on it." A small pause. Not confusion. Recognition. "Oh," she said. "Yes, about that." My grip tightened around the phone. "The rehearsal dinner is really just for the wedding party and immediate family," she continued. "Jonathan's parents are hosting, and they're very particular about numbers." Immediate family. The words sat there, waiting. "I'm not immediate family?" I asked. "That's not what I meant," she replied quickly. "You know how these things are. It's not personal." I looked back at the list on my screen. "Jessica is on it," I said. "Miranda's friend from business school. She's not family." "She's a bridesmaid, Waverly. Please don't make this difficult." There it was. That familiar shift. The one where asking a reasonable question somehow became the problem. I felt something settle in my chest, not sharp, not explosive, just cold. "I'm not trying to make anything difficult," I said quietly. "I just wanted to understand." "And I've explained it," she replied, a slight edge creeping into her voice. "There's limited space, important guests. We have to be mindful." Important. I let that word hang for a moment. Then I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Okay," I said. "I understand." Good, she said, relief returning to her tone. We'll see you at the ceremony. The call ended. I sat there for a long time after that, the silence in my apartment heavier than usual. On the table beside me, the envelope was exactly where I had left it. $10,000. 3 years of effort. And I wasn't even included in the dinner the night before. I should have taken that as the answer. A clear one. But instead, I told myself something else. That the rehearsal dinner didn't matter. That the wedding day would be different. That when it really counted, they wouldn't leave me out. It's strange, the things you convince yourself of when you've spent years hoping to be chosen. Even when every sign is pointing the other way. I closed my laptop, turned off the light, and went to bed with that thought still intact. I didn't know yet how thoroughly it would be proven wrong. 3 days before the wedding, my phone rang just after dinner. It was Aunt Diane. I could hear the faint snip of scissors in the background, the soft rustle of leaves. She was probably at her flower shop in Hartford, working late like she always did when she had too much on her mind. Waverly, she said gently. I heard about the rehearsal dinner. I leaned back against my kitchen counter, staring at the envelope still sitting where I'd left it. It's fine, I said. Just logistics. There was a pause on the other end. No, she said quietly. It's not. Something in her voice made me close my eyes. It's your mother being your mother, she continued. And I need to ask you something, sweetheart. Do you actually want to go to this wedding? The question caught me off guard. Of course I do, I said automatically. Miranda's my sister. Yes, Aunt Diane said. She is. But that doesn't always mean what we want it to mean. I didn't respond right away. The truth was, I hadn't let myself think about that question. Not fully. Wanting and obligation had blurred together a long time ago. I've already made plans, I said instead. I took time off work. I bought the train ticket. I know what you've done, she interrupted softly. I know how much you've tried. That landed somewhere deep. And I also know, she added, that trying doesn't always change how people treat you. I swallowed. What are you saying? I asked. There was a quiet shift on the line, like she had set something down. I'm saying, she replied, that you deserve to be somewhere you're actually wanted. The words were simple, but they felt unfamiliar, like a language I understood, but had never spoken. I let out a slow breath. It's just one day, I said. I can get through it. You can, she agreed. You've gotten through a lot worse. Another pause. Then, more carefully. But getting through something and accepting it are not the same thing. I looked around my apartment, at the small space, the worn couch, the life I had built quietly, without much acknowledgement from anyone who shared my last name. What would you do? I asked. Aunt Diane didn't answer immediately. When your mother got married, she said finally. I was seated at the last table, near the catering station. I frowned slightly. You've never told me that. I didn't think it mattered back then, she said. I told myself it was just how things worked. Her voice softened. But the part I remember isn't where I sat, it's how she introduced me. I waited. She told people I was the one who arranges flowers, not her sister, not by name, just useful in a way that didn't require connection. I felt something tighten in my chest. That's what this is, Waverly, Aunt Diane continued. It's not about space, it's about image. And right now, you don't fit the image your mother wants to present. I didn't argue, because I couldn't. So, what should I do? I asked quietly. That's not my decision, she said. But I will tell you this. Her voice steadied. I'll be there on Saturday, and if anything happens, anything at all, you won't be alone. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Thank you. Always, she said. After we hung up, I stood there for a long time, the silence settling back in. Her question lingered. Do you actually want to go? I looked at the envelope again, then away, because I still wasn't ready to answer that honestly. The night before the wedding, my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. I was already in bed, lights off, trying and failing to fall asleep. The name on the screen made me sit up instantly. Sophie. She and I had met in college, back when life still felt open and undecided. She was one of the few people who knew how my family worked, not just the polished version, but the quiet gaps underneath it. And somehow, out of all the event planners in New York, her company had been hired for Miranda's wedding. She had kept things professional the entire time. Until that night. Wave, she said the second I answered, her voice low, tight. I need you to stay calm, okay? My stomach dropped. What is it? There was a pause, like she was choosing her words carefully. I was doing a final review of the seating chart tonight, she said. Last check before tomorrow. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. Okay. You were originally assigned to table 3, she continued. Family section, right near the front. A small flicker of relief started to form, brief, fragile. Then she kept talking. But when I looked tonight, your name was crossed out. Everything inside me went still. Crossed out? I repeated. Yeah, she said. Not digitally, by hand. Someone printed the chart, made changes, and wrote notes in pen. I could hear papers shifting on her end. There's something written next to your name, she added. My fingers tightened around the phone. What does it say? Sophie hesitated. And in that hesitation, I already knew this wasn't going to be something small. It says, she finally read, her voice barely above a whisper, guest will receive limited access badge. No meal. The words didn't make sense at first. They just sat there. Then they landed. Hard. Like something physical hitting my chest. No meal? I said. I'm so sorry, Sophie replied quickly. I didn't even notice it earlier because the digital chart still had you seated. This must have been changed after the final print. I stood up without realizing it, pacing the small space between my bed and the window. Who wrote it? I asked. Another pause. I can't say for sure, she said carefully. But I've seen your mom's handwriting before, on vendor notes and confirmations. My breath caught. And? I pushed. It looks like hers, Wave. The room felt smaller suddenly. Air thinner. I took a photo, Sophie added. I didn't want to call you without proof. I'm sending it now. A second later my phone buzzed. I opened the image. There it was. My name, printed neatly. A line drawn straight through it. And next to it, in familiar, precise cursive, guest will receive limited access badge, no meal. I had seen that handwriting my entire life. Birthday cards, permission slips, notes left on the kitchen counter. There was no mistaking it. My mother hadn't forgotten me. She hadn't overlooked anything. She had planned this. Carefully, quietly, deliberately. Sophie. My voice sounded distant, even to me. I know, she said softly. I'm so sorry. I stared at the screen, at the evidence I couldn't unsee. They want me there, I said slowly, just not really there. Wave. They want the gift, I continued, more to myself than to her. But not me at the table. Silence settled between us. Then Sophie spoke again, gentler this time. What are you going to do? I didn't answer right away, because for the first time since that invitation arrived, I wasn't thinking about how to make things work. I was thinking about what it would mean to stop trying. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the glow from my phone still faintly lighting the room. The image of that seating chart burned into my mind. By 3 a.m., the shock had worn off. By 4, the hurt had settled into something heavier. And sometime just before sunrise, something else took its place. Not anger. Not exactly. Clarity. I got up when my alarm went off, even though I hadn't slept. The morning felt unusually quiet, like the world hadn't caught up yet to what I already knew. Today wasn't going to be what I had hoped, but it was going to be something else. I stood in front of my closet for a long moment before choosing my dress. Navy blue. Simple, clean lines, nothing that would draw attention. It wasn't new. I had bought it 2 years ago for a work event, but it still fit well, still looked appropriate. Appropriate. That word had followed me most of my life. Dress appropriately. Speak appropriately. React appropriately. Be just enough, but never too much. I did my makeup carefully. Neutral tones. Light mascara. Something that would hold, even if the day didn't. Then I sat down at my kitchen table. The envelope was exactly where I had left it. For a moment, I just looked at it. $10,000. 3 years of my life, distilled into paper and ink. Then I reached for my phone. One by one, I pulled up what I had. The screenshot of my mother's text asking me to send the money early. The photo Sophie sent of the seating chart, my name crossed out. The image I had taken weeks ago of the check and the letter inside the envelope. I didn't rush. I organized them, saved them in one place. Not because I planned to make a scene, but because, for the first time, I wasn't willing to be dismissed without proof. I slipped my phone into my clutch. Then the envelope. I paused with my hand still inside the bag. There was still time to not go. To send a message, to make an excuse, to disappear quietly and let the day happen without me. No confrontation, no humiliation, just distance. It would have been easier, safer, but something in me resisted that. Because leaving quietly would have meant accepting the version of the story they were writing about me. That I didn't matter enough to show up. That I wouldn't notice. That I would simply comply. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. I was going to see it for myself. I picked up my phone and called Aunt Diane. She answered on the first ring. "I'm still going," I said. "I figured you would," she replied, not surprised. "Are you okay?" she asked. I thought about it. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm steady." "That's enough," she said gently. "I don't know what I'm going to do when I get there," I admitted. "You don't have to decide that right now," she said. "Just don't abandon yourself in the process." Her words stayed with me. "Will you be there?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "I'll be near the reception area most of the time. If you need me, just look for the flowers." I made the arrangements myself. I smiled, just slightly. "Thank you." "And Waverly," she added, her voice soft but firm, "whatever happens today, don't apologize for taking up space." I closed my eyes for a second. "I won't." We hung up. I grabbed my clutch, slipped on my shoes, and took one last look around my apartment before heading out. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like something solid. By the time I stepped outside, the sun was already rising. And I had a feeling this day was going to change something I couldn't undo. The Whitmore estate looked exactly like it had in the photos, only bigger, more polished, more intentional. Like every inch of it had been designed to say something without ever raising its voice. White columns framed the front of the house. The lawn stretched out in perfect symmetry. Even the gravel under my shoes sounded different, softer somehow, like it belonged to a place where nothing harsh was allowed to exist. I paid the taxi driver, stepped out, and stood there for a second longer than necessary, just taking it in. Not because I was impressed, but because I needed a moment before walking into something I already knew would hurt. "Someplace, huh?" the driver said with a low whistle before pulling away. "Something like that," I replied. I adjusted my grip on my clutch and walked toward the check-in table. 2 staff members stood behind it, both dressed in black, both smiling in the same professional way that never quite reached their eyes. In front of me, a woman in a pale green dress gave her name and was handed a gold badge. Gold. It caught the light when she pinned it to her chest. She didn't even look at it twice. Why would she? It told her she belonged. "Name?" the man behind the table asked as I stepped forward. "Waverly Palmer." He scanned the list, his finger moving down the page slowly. Then he paused. Something shifted in his expression. Subtle, quick. But I saw it. He reached beneath the table and came back up holding a badge. Gray. He hesitated just slightly before handing it to me. "Ma'am, this badge allows access to the ceremony area only," he said, his voice careful. "The reception tent requires a gold badge." I looked at the card in my hand. Limited access guest. There it was again. No longer just a note on a page. Now something I had to wear. "I'm the bride's sister," I said. Not defensively, just factually. His eyes flickered with something close to sympathy. "I'm sorry," he replied. "I'm just following the list." Of course he was. He wasn't the one who made the decision. Before I could respond, I felt a familiar hand on my arm. Light. Controlled. Possessive. "Waverly," my mother said, her voice warm enough for anyone watching. "Let's step aside for a moment." She didn't wait for me to agree. She guided me a few steps away from the table, toward a cluster of white roses where fewer people were passing by. Up close, she looked exactly how she wanted to be seen. Perfect makeup. Perfect posture. Every detail. Intentional. "Don't make a scene," she said under her breath, her smile never fading. "From a distance, this looks like a pleasant conversation." I let out a slow breath. "What does this mean?" I asked, holding up the badge. Her eyes flicked to it briefly, then back to my face. "It means," she said quietly, "you can attend the ceremony. But there isn't space for you at the reception." She said it like she was explaining seating at a small dinner party, not excluding her own daughter from a once-in-a-lifetime event. "There's no room?" I repeated. "Jonathan's parents have many important guests," she said. We had to be thoughtful about the seating. Thoughtful. I almost smiled at that. You could have told me, I said, before I came all the way out here. She tilted her head slightly. And you wouldn't have come, she replied. She wasn't wrong. That was the point. She reached out and lightly adjusted the edge of my sleeve, as if fixing something small. Just stay for the ceremony, she added. Leave your gift on the table, say hello to a few people, and then you can head back. Miranda will understand. I looked at her. Really looked. At the woman who had asked for my money weeks ago. Who had written that note. Who had decided carefully exactly where I belonged. You want my gift, I said slowly. But not me. Her expression tightened for just a fraction of a second. Don't be dramatic, Waverly. Something inside me shifted. Not breaking. Locking. I nodded once. Okay, Mom, I said calmly. I won't make a scene. She exhaled, relieved. And just like that, she thought the situation was handled. She had no idea what I was about to do next. I followed her into the garden like nothing had happened. That was the part I had learned over years, how to move through discomfort without showing it, how to sit where I was placed, how to make things easier for everyone else. Rows of white chairs stretched across the lawn, perfectly aligned beneath an arch of roses and eucalyptus. The kind of setting people saved on Pinterest boards and called timeless. I walked to the very last row, not assigned, just instinct. The chair was different from the others, simple, metal, no cushion. From there, I could see everything without being seen. Which, I realized, had always been my position in this family. At the edge, present, but not included. Guests filled in around me, voices soft, laughter light. No one asked who I was, no one needed to. The ceremony began right on time. Music shifted, people stood, heads turned. Miranda appeared at the far end of the aisle, and for a moment, everything else fell away. She looked beautiful. There's no other word for it. The dress layers of lace and tulle caught the sunlight in a way that made her almost glow. She moved slowly, deliberately, like she had practiced this moment in her head 100 times. Maybe she had. Our father stood at the front, waiting. When she reached him, he took her arm, and together they walked the length of the aisle. I watched them, not with resentment, just distance. Because I knew, even then, that there was no version of this day where I would be part of that picture. The vows were exactly what you'd expect. Carefully written, emotionally measured. Promises about partnership, growth, building a future together. People smiled, some cried quietly. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, her shoulders lifting slightly with each breath. From where I sat, it looked convincing. If you didn't know her, if you didn't know what had been written in pen just the night before, when Miranda and Jonathan kissed, the crowd rose in applause. Everyone stood. Except me. I stayed seated, hands folded in my lap, watching as petals were tossed into the air and laughter filled the space. For a moment I felt something close to grief. Not for the wedding, but for the version of myself that had believed this day might mean something different. After the ceremony, the photographer gathered everyone toward the front. Immediate family first, he called out. My parents moved forward. Miranda and Jonathan stepped into place. A cluster formed quickly, organized, practiced. I stayed where I was. Anyone else? The photographer asked, scanning the group. My mother shook her head. No, we're all here. The words landed clean. No hesitation. No correction. Just a complete picture with me already removed. The camera clicked. Smiles locked into place. Another version of the family portrait I would never be part of. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress, and stepped back as guests began drifting toward the reception tent. It was just beyond the garden, glowing softly under white fabric and hanging lights. From the outside it looked warm, inviting, full. I watched as people moved toward it in small groups, laughing, linking arms, adjusting heels on the gravel. No one looked back. Not once. I stood there until the last of them disappeared inside. And for a moment, just a moment, I considered leaving, taking my envelope, walking away quietly, letting them have their perfect day. It would have been easier, cleaner. But then I thought about the badge, about the note, about every moment that had led here. And I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to say before. Leaving quietly would not be dignity. It would be agreement. A soft voice broke through my thoughts. How are you holding up? I turned. Aunt Diane stood beside me, her expression steady, her presence grounding in a way nothing else had been all day. I held up the gray badge. They don't want me at the reception. I know, she said gently. Sophie told me. She didn't look surprised. Just unsurprised. What are you going to do? She asked. I looked toward the tent, toward the entrance where a table sat just inside covered in silk, stacked with gifts, then back at her. I'm going to get my envelope back. She studied my face for a second, then nodded. I'll be nearby, she said. You won't be alone. I took a breath. Steady. Clear. And for the first time that day, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. I walked toward the reception tent slowly, not hesitating, not rushing, just deliberate. The closer I got, the more I could hear it, the soft hum of conversation, glasses clinking, laughter rising and falling in waves. From the outside, it looked exactly like what it was supposed to be. Warm, full, celebratory, like nothing had gone wrong. A staff member stepped slightly into my path as I reached the entrance. Ma'am, may I see your badge? His tone was polite, professional. I held it up, gray. He glanced at it, then back at me, already apologizing before he spoke. I'm sorry. This badge doesn't allow access to the reception area. Gold badges only. I understand, I said. And I did. This wasn't his decision. I'm not going inside, I added calmly. I just need a moment near the entrance. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Just not past the main threshold. That's fine. He stepped aside. And just like that, I was standing at the edge of something I wasn't allowed to enter. From where I stood, I could see everything. Tables dressed in ivory linen, tall floral arrangements Aunt Diane's work, I realized rising like soft clouds above each setting, crystal glasses catching the light, waiters moving through the space with trays of champagne. At the center, the head table. My parents stood nearby, greeting guests, smiling, receiving compliments as if they had personally orchestrated something flawless. Miranda moved through the crowd, radiant, effortless, exactly where she belonged. And then, for a second, her eyes met mine. It wasn't long, just enough for recognition, for possibility. I waited, not for an apology, just acknowledgement. A pause, a gesture, something. But she didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't signal to anyone. She looked at me, and then looked away, and kept walking. That was it. That was the moment something settled completely inside me. Not anger, not even hurt, just finality. The staff member near the entrance shifted beside me, uncomfortable. Would you like me to bring you something outside? He offered. Water, maybe? No, I said gently. Thank you. I stepped back, not away from the tent, but away from the last piece of doubt I had been holding on to. Because until that moment, some part of me had still believed this might be a misunderstanding. That Miranda didn't know. That she would fix it if she did. But she knew. And she chose not to. I turned and walked along the side of the tent, toward the east entrance. Sophie had mentioned it the night before. The gift table would be there. Unwatched. Unprotected. Because no one expects someone to take back what they've already given. The gravel shifted under my heels as I rounded the corner. And then I saw it. A long table draped in white silk, boxes wrapped in perfect paper, ribbons tied in clean, symmetrical bows, cards placed carefully on top, names written in elegant script. It looked like abundance, like generosity, like everything this day was supposed to represent. Some of the gifts were clearly expensive, familiar brand names, polished packaging, things chosen to be seen. And somewhere among them, mine. I stepped closer, scanning slowly. Then I found it. A simple white envelope. My handwriting. Waverly Palmer. It had been moved slightly tucked beneath a larger box, like it didn't quite belong on display. I stared at it for a moment. At the weight of everything it held. Not just money, time, effort, hope. Then I reached out and picked it up. The paper felt exactly the same. But I didn't. I slipped it into my clutch in one smooth motion. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Just a quiet correction. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard her voice behind me. Waverly? My mother. Sharp, controlled, already unraveling underneath. I turned slowly. My mother stood a few steps away, a champagne flute still in her hand, though she wasn't drinking it anymore. Her smile was gone now, completely gone, and in its place was something tighter, sharper. "What are you doing?" she asked. Not loud, but urgent. Controlled in the way people get when they're trying not to draw attention. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. At the woman who had planned this entire day down to the smallest detail, including exactly where I was allowed to exist inside it. Then I spoke. "I'm taking back my envelope." For a second, she didn't react. Like her mind needed a moment to catch up to the words. Then, "You can't do that." Her voice dropped lower, more forceful. "That gift is already given." I shook my head slightly. "It hasn't been opened. It hasn't been deposited. It's still mine." "This is not the time for this, Waverly," she said quickly. "Put it back." A couple nearby had started to glance in our direction. Not fully watching yet, but noticing. I kept my voice even. "You told me to come, leave the gift, and go," I said. "So I'm adjusting that plan." Her jaw tightened. "You are being incredibly inappropriate right now." "Inappropriate?" I repeated softly. "Yes," she said. "This is your sister's wedding." I held her gaze. "And I'm her sister." That landed. For just a second. Then she recovered. "Don't do this here," she whispered. "We can talk about it later." Later. Another familiar word. Later never came. Not for my graduation. Not for the years in between. Not for anything that mattered to me. "No," I said calmly. "We're not doing this later." Her eyes flicked toward the tent. Toward the people. Toward the image she had spent months building. "Waverly," she said, her voice tightening further. "If anyone sees this, they already have," I replied quietly. And it was true. A few more people had turned now. Not a crowd, but enough. Enough for the moment to exist outside of just us. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Sophie. She walked past us quickly, headset in place, speaking to someone about timing and logistics. As she passed, her hand brushed mine, brief, subtle, and something small pressed into my palm. Paper. I didn't look down. I didn't need to. I already knew what it was. The note. The one from the seating chart. The one in my mother's handwriting. Proof. My fingers closed around it instinctively before I slipped it into my clutch beside the envelope. My mother noticed the movement. "What was that?" she asked sharply. "Nothing," I said. But something had already shifted. Because now, this wasn't just my word. It was documented. Intentional. Real. "Patricia?" A new voice entered the space. Older. Measured. Curious in a way that wasn't casual. We both turned. Eleanor Whitmore stood just a few feet away. Jonathan's mother. Elegant. Composed. Watching. Her gaze moved from my mother, to me, to the clutch in my hand, and finally, to the gray badge still pinned to my dress. She didn't miss anything. "Is everything all right?" she asked. My mother's posture straightened instantly. "Of course," she said too quickly. "Just a small misunderstanding." Eleanor's eyes returned to me. "A misunderstanding?" she repeated. There was no accusation in her tone. Just interest. Careful, deliberate interest. I felt my heart beat steady, not faster, clearer. Because in that moment, I understood something important. This wasn't about making a scene. It was about telling the truth, in a place where it could no longer be ignored. I met Eleanor's gaze. And for the first time that day, I didn't feel small. "I don't think it's a misunderstanding," I said calmly. My mother's head snapped toward me. "Waverly." But I didn't stop. Because this time, I wasn't waiting to be included. I was choosing to be heard. "I don't think it's a misunderstanding," I said again, steady this time. The air shifted. Not loud, just enough for people nearby to notice. My mother leaned in. "Waverly, not here." But I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was looking at Eleanor Whitmore. "I was invited to the ceremony," I said. "But not the reception." Her eyes flicked to the gray badge, then back to me. "I see." I reached into my clutch and unfolded the paper Sophie had given me. "This is from the seating chart," I said. A handwritten note. My mother stiffened. "Waverly." Eleanor extended her hand. "May I?" I gave it to her. She read silently. Then out loud, calm and precise. "Guest will receive limited access badge, no meal." Silence settled. "In your handwriting?" she asked my mother. No answer. I pulled out the envelope. "There's a cashier's check in here for $10,000, I said. I saved for 3 years. A quiet ripple moved through the space. I wasn't given a seat, I added. But I was still expected to give this. Miranda's voice cut in. What is going on? She looked at me, at the envelope, at our mother. And for the first time, this wasn't something I felt. It was something everyone could see. Miranda looked between us, unsettled. Mom? She asked. My mother hesitated. It was complicated, she said. We had limited seating, important guests, decisions, I said quietly. Miranda turned to me, her voice tightening. Why are you doing this right now? When would have been better? I asked. She didn't answer. Eleanor stepped forward slightly. Were you aware of this arrangement? She asked Miranda. Miranda hesitated. I knew space was tight, but I didn't. You knew I wasn't at the rehearsal dinner, I said. She flinched. That was different. Was it? Silence. Jonathan stood nearby, tense but quiet. This is enough, my mother said sharply. Waverly, put the envelope back. We'll discuss this privately. No. Just one word. Miranda's eyes dropped to the envelope. You're really taking it back? Yes. Her expression hardened. That's selfish. I held her gaze. Is it? I asked. To not give $10,000 to a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend? She had nothing to say. Because, said out loud. There was nothing to defend. Eleanor folded the paper neatly. I believe the situation is quite clear, she said. And just like that, control slipped from my mother's hands. The silence stretched just long enough to feel permanent. Then my mother broke. You're being ungrateful, she said, her voice no longer controlled. After everything we've done for you. There it was. The script I had heard my entire life. I almost smiled. For me? I asked quietly. She faltered. Just slightly. But enough. Miranda stepped forward, her voice sharper now, edged with panic more than anger. Waverly, stop. You're ruining this. I looked at her. At the dress. The setting. The life she had stepped into so seamlessly. I'm not ruining anything, I said. I'm just not pretending anymore. Jonathan shifted beside her, uncomfortable, like he was watching something he didn't know how to fix. Eleanor didn't move. She simply watched. Measured, quiet, and then she spoke. To exclude a member of immediate family, she said calmly, while expecting a financial contribution of that size. She paused. Is not a misunderstanding. No one interrupted her. Because no one could. My mother's composure slipped further. You don't understand our family dynamic, she said quickly. Eleanor's gaze didn't soften. I understand exactly what I'm seeing. That was the moment it ended. Not with shouting. Not with chaos. Just with the truth, spoken plainly, in a room that had no space left to hide it. I closed my clutch around the envelope, and for the first time all day, I felt completely certain. Miranda's composure cracked next. This is my wedding day, she said, her voice trembling now. This is supposed to be the best day of my life. For a moment, I felt it. Not guilt, but something close to it. Because I understood what this day meant to her. I just also understood what it had cost me to stand here. I know, I said softly. And I meant it. I'm not trying to take that from you. Then stop, she said quickly. Please, just put it back and we'll fix this later. Later. That word again. I shook my head. No. Her expression shifted hurt, then anger. You're choosing this moment, she said, out of all moments. I didn't choose this moment, I replied. It was chosen for me. Silence followed. Heavy. Unavoidable. I looked at her one last time. Not as the sister I had spent years trying to reach, but as someone who had made her decision long before today. I hope you have a beautiful reception, I said quietly. Then I turned. No rush, no hesitation. Just movement. Aunt Diane stepped to my side without a word, her presence steady, grounding. Behind us, I could hear voices rising sharp, uneven, trying to contain something that had already slipped out of control. But I didn't turn back, not this time. Because for once, I wasn't the one being left behind. I was the one leaving. We walked past the garden without stopping. The music had started again behind us, something brighter, louder, like the band was trying to stitch the moment back together before it unraveled any further. Don't look back, Aunt Diane said quietly. I nodded, but I still did. Just once, near the edge of the tent, I saw my father. He wasn't speaking, wasn't moving, just watching me. For a second, something old stirred in my chest. A reflex more than a feeling. The part of me that had always waited just a little longer for him to step forward, to say something, to choose me, even once. He didn't. He turned away, and that was enough. We reached the front drive where the gravel curved out toward the gate, the same space where I had arrived an hour earlier, still believing this day might hold something different. A taxi was already waiting. I had called it that morning, just in case. You planned ahead, Aunt Diane said as we approached. I think I knew, I replied. Not consciously, but somewhere deeper. We got into the back seat, and the door shut with a quiet, final sound. Back to the station? The driver asked. Yes, I said. As the car pulled away, the estate began to shrink behind us. The white columns, the manicured lawn, the version of my family that had never included me. I watched it for a moment. Then I looked forward, and waited to see what that felt like. We hadn't gone far when another car pulled in front of us. The driver slowed, then stopped. A white SUV. The door flew open before the engine even settled. Waverly, Miranda, still in her wedding dress, breathless, mascara no longer perfect. She ran toward the taxi like something was slipping away and she wasn't ready to let it go. Please, she said, reaching the window. Just come back. I rolled it down halfway. There's nothing to go back to, I said. Yes, there is, she insisted. Eleanor is asking questions. Jonathan's parents, this isn't how today is supposed to go. I held her gaze. This is exactly how it went, I said. She shook her head, desperate now. I'll fix it. You can sit at the table. I'll tell them it was a mistake. A mistake. I almost answered immediately. But instead, I let the silence sit for a second. You knew, I said. Her eyes flickered. That was enough. This isn't something you fix after, I continued quietly. It's something you chose before. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Please, she whispered. I shook my head. Go back to your wedding, Miranda. Then I rolled the window up, and this time, I didn't look back. My phone started ringing before we reached the main road. Mom. Then again. Dad. Then Miranda. The screen kept lighting up like something urgent still needed to be fixed. I silenced it. Not out of anger, just certainty. Aunt Diane reached over and gently took my hand. You don't have to answer, she said. I know. I stared out the window as the estate disappeared behind trees and stone walls. Everything looked normal out here. Quiet roads, open sky, people going about their day without knowing anything had shifted. My phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. Dad. Waverly, he said, his voice strained. Please come back. Your mother is… she's not handling this well. I closed my eyes briefly. She handled it fine when she made the decision, I said. That's not fair. No, I interrupted gently. What wasn't fair already happened. Silence. Then softer. I didn't know about the badge. You didn't ask, I said. Another silence. He didn't argue. I'm not coming back, I added. A pause. Then, quietly, I understand. The line went dead. I handed the phone back to Aunt Diane and let the quiet return. The tears didn't come until the train station. We sat on a quiet bench, the late afternoon light stretching across the platform. People moved around us with weekend bags and small conversations, completely unaware that something in me had just ended. I actually did it, I said, my voice unsteady. I took it back. I left. Aunt Diane squeezed my hand. You did, she said gently. They're going to hate me. She shook her head. Some of them might, she said. But they weren't treating you with love to begin with. That landed deeper than anything else had that day. I stared down at my hands. It was never going to be enough, was it? I asked. No matter what I gave. No, she said softly. It wasn't. The tears came then. Not quiet, not controlled. Years of trying, years of waiting, years of believing that one day something would change. I cried for all of it. And when it passed, what was left wasn't relief. It was something steadier, quieter. I wasn't part of their version of family anymore. But for the first time, I wasn't trying to earn my place in it either.